But that was the biggest sign to me. The one, like SBF had no idea what he was talking about when he was going on CNBC. And then two, it's like, how do they have all this money to buy all these sponsorships? It was completely obvious.
It was all their clients' money.
Sponsorship, including the umps at the World Series last year, are wearing FTX patches, and that'll be in the footage forever.
Yeah, and so I guess we got to continue the conversation. We just recorded the last trade. Matt came in at the end, and we decided let's just do a party rip and a rabbit hole recap.
Yeah, I thought it was joining the rabbit hole recap, and these fellas were here.
we never left.
We ninja launched you, but titled the episode, "Is there a bank run on Binance right now?"
Why don't you introduce our guests for the party rip first? Because
that would be
on audio. They have no idea who's talking.
That would be good. We are joined by our good friend Michael Tanguma. To his left, we have Brian Cabellis, and we have Jesse Myers, three on-ramp team members on the show.
Yeah, we were recording the last trade. We were introducing Brian, who is officially coming on to lead strategy and research. And so we had it was a good conversation. And towards the tail end, Jesse brought up what was going on with Binance, which I actually hadn't spent time on Twitter, so didn't know. And then I went into it and didn't actually articulate as eloquent as Matt did. But then when Matt was about to come in for RHR, we knew where Matt's stance would side on this. And so he came in and explained where it's not likely or the same scenario that we're seeing with Binance right now as an FTX.
Yeah, Matt, so why don't you give your breakdown? Because it was pretty thorough.
I did such a good job the first time.
But Jesse can start as well if it.
Yeah. I mean, Jesse. Well, first of all, like people are saying, there's a bank run on Binance right now, and obviously, if you are, custodians are trusted third parties. You shouldn't trust custodians with your Bitcoin. They can rug you at will. They're essentially, rug pull technology. They can exit scam you. They can lose funds through theft, or they could get pressured by governments to shut down, and then your Bitcoin could be stuck in some process for a long period of time. Or they could go bankrupt. I guess that was part of that as well. And if they go bankrupt, who knows how long it takes to get your money back in a bankruptcy process. So the Gox people still haven't gotten their money back. So custodians are a risk. Everyone should, learn how to hold Bitcoin themselves. It's not as hard as you think. Get on it, figure out how to do it, improve your situation, hold Bitcoin yourself. All that said, Binance does publish their on-chain activity, their wallet addresses for customer deposits. And those are at all-time highs right now. Near all-time highs. They have over 700,000 Bitcoin in custody. That's equivalent to $18.2 billion. They are by far the largest exchange in the world by pretty much every metric. But the one that's hardest to fake is customer deposits because there's actually on-chain activity there. FTX is a completely different ballgame. I mean, for context, when FTX failed, Glassnode and the other chain analysis firms couldn't even identify any of their Bitcoin wallets. And at the time, what a lot of people were saying was, oh, they had great OPSEC and we couldn't figure out what their Bitcoin wallets were. In hindsight, it was probably because they had no fucking Bitcoin that they were holding for customers.
What was the stat? They claimed to have like 8 billion in Bitcoin, but they wound up only having 6 million or something like that.
Yeah, like a stick of gum.
Yeah, they had like fucking nothing. So I mean, I would be hesitant to picture this as the same as FTX. I mean, it doesn't mean Binance can't fail. It just means that it's a completely different situation. SBF was this fiat maxi that came out of nowhere, played ridiculous leverage games all the way from the very beginning. I mean, as we started off, it was a Ponzi from the very beginning. I just think CZ, is clearly a shitcoiner. I think BNB takes, third party risk and amplifies it even more. So I've always told people, don't touch BNB. It's completely centralized. You know, to completely own it, I've been saying it since like 5,000% ago. People that didn't listen to me probably did decently well. But yeah, I just think it's a completely different situation. I think it's interesting who the commentators are, like kind of fanning the flames on this one. A lot of people that got burned by FTX that look like complete idiots because they were also FTX proponents. A lot of suits that just don't like that CZ is running a shadow bank, and think like you're automatically, a criminal for breaking U.S. financial regulations, which is, what CZ has done from the very beginning. And there's a lot of similarities to me with that in terms of the Tether conversation, which, Tether, I've never held Tether. I don't think people should hold Tether. I think it has massive custodial risk. Just like any other custodian, they could rug pull you at will. And they have a massive target on their back from the U.S. government from the very beginning. And if you actually look at it, by the way, on that lens, because Tether and Bitfinex are tied at the hip ever since the beginning and the launch of Tether. Tether was essentially a way for the Bitfinex guys to extend their fiat on-ramps to all the exchanges that were underbanked and had no bank accounts. Bitfinex customer deposits up. Binance customer deposits up. Both massive targets of the U.S. government. Coinbase deposits down. Gemini deposits, massive bank run on Gemini happening. But meanwhile, everyone wants to talk about Binance.
Yeah, there's one thing to add, and then I would love to hear somebody's rebuttal to that, because the way it started on the other side was that it was a given that 90%, Jesse and Marty had said 90% chance Binance is done
Eventually,
and 50% this year.
50% by the end of the year.
Yeah. But like the point, I don't know if you touched on that, is that like from a just pure like business perspective, like the game theory is CZ basically owns like Vegas in my mind. And if the building has like some problem, is on fire, you don't let the whole city burn. Like you just figure out how to like contain it. Even if there was a problem, whether it's like what you mentioned with Bitfinex and Leo, and they make it whole. It's like it's completely different with the FTX thing. They never made any money. They never were like, there was no business to protect. Because that was always a common trope when FTX went down. It's like, well, how could they let this happen? They were printing money. Why would they go so far? It's like, no, it was a Ponzi the whole way. The dynamic was completely different.
Yeah. Well, all right. Let's walk through some facts. Matt pointed out that you can identify Binance's wallets on chain. They have 18.2 billion worth of Bitcoin.
They're very proud of their proof of reserves.
Proof of reserve. Well, that's the thing. Like they have that proof of reserves. What we don't know is the liabilities. They have $18.2 billion worth of Bitcoin. What are the claims that their customers have? What is that amount? Unknown at this point.
And how much have they borrowed against?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Like how much have they borrowed against potentially to prop up BNB? And then Matt, this is something we paid attention to throughout the years too. Like one of the heuristics that an exchange is in trouble is that they'll ninja launch more stringent KYC on users as they're trying to take Bitcoin off, which has been happening recently too.
No, I mean, look, CZ's a fucker for shotgun KYC. I don't know if I invented the term shotgun KYC, but I might have, and it was first used on CZ, on his policy. So basically, what is shotgun KYC? It's this idea that you deposit without KYC, and then they hit you with KYC when you want to withdraw, which is incredibly malicious and predatory. I think it's funny because most of the CZ haters are like, you're breaking U.S. FinCEN regulation. And so he's like, he has to play some kind of game, right? Where he has to do some kind of KYC to try and get the pressure off of his back. And he's kind of like damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. I don't know. I think a better argument for trying to, prevent withdrawal is he has charged very high fees in transaction fees and withdrawal fees. A lot of times higher than what the network's actually, like he was charging like $15 for a Bitcoin withdrawal at one point. That we didn't even come fucking close to that on transaction fees. And he's constantly out there telling people not to self-custody and that is dangerous and that they should custody with him. By the way, one of the top self-custody wallets is owned by Binance. No one should use it, but it's called Trust Wallet. And no one should trust it.
They messed up their private key generation too, didn't they?
But I just, look.
Yeah, you know what, Matt? You know what I think's more likely? And it just hit me as... Jesse, on when we were chatting earlier, he was explaining that these exchanges have all been, the SEC's come in, they basically like, FTX was just one. There's all these different things. They're kind of cleaning out, BlackRock's coming. It feels more that this is like this concerted effort to try to get a run and see if get rid of Binance before. It feels like to clean up crypto.
Yeah, they want to get rid of Binance. The blue checks want to get rid of Binance before the BlackRock.
Exactly.
Because they can't control Binance. Binance is 50% of the market, and it's essentially a shadow financial system. And he's spread out all throughout Africa and Latin America, and it's a threat to the U.S. financial hegemony. I mean, this is why Bitcoin is leaderless and decentralized, and you don't have a figurehead that can be pressured, because when you fly close to the sun in terms of the U.S. financial regulations, like usually bad shit happens.
Yeah, you get Marty and Jesse saying 90% chance that they're fucking done.
I mean, I think that kind of speaks to that 90% eventually CZ goes down. Like
Jesse, give your case.
Give your case. Right. And I'm curious, does the 90% count? Like if it's like a cruise, like if the U.S. government takes
yes.
Well, I guess so. I mean, like, okay, this is,
I guess so.
Take it all the way back. Like, how is this really any different from Mojo Nation in that sense? Like, there's some target here that can be targeted, and if it's a threat to the system, they'll target it, and that's what they're doing.
We need to isolate the conversation, right? Because if the argument is that Tether, Bitfinex, Binance are massive targets of the U.S. government, and the U.S. government tends to go out of their way. I mean, we're going to talk about Tornado Cash. They go out of their way to attack these people. They have a long history of it. There's an argument there for that, but I think that needs to be isolated away from insolvency. And the question really is, are they insolvent, or do they actually have customer funds? That's the real isolate, and it gets mixed together with this kind of like suit racism on someone who's outside of the U.S. financial system.
Okay, so let's go through the smoke that's out there about like why may they be in trouble. So first of all, BNB token has been the only coin over the last 6 years that has massively outperformed Bitcoin in that time frame, like that full time frame. And it ran up to $600 per coin in late 2021. Since then, it's trailed down to low 200s. Now, there's been some speculation. This is all speculation, and it's the market super sleuths out there.
Twitter really made up a number. They were like 212. It's 212. That's the number.
Well,
and that's based on one of the that's based on a position that's on a publicly visible.
What's the current market cap of BNB?
Great question.
Look, BNB. Not sure. Yeah, first of all, on BNB, one common misconception I see is
that stat, please.
That it's an FTT clone.
It's 33 billion.
FTT was like the source of a lot of the pain that we saw on the FTX collapse. FTT, it was the opposite. FTT is a clone of BNB because CZ showed the world that he could print his own fucking token, prop it up, and make a shit ton of fucking money. And then FTX mirrored that. They copied the mechanics with FTT off of BNB. BNB came first. I don't know if that distinction matters that much, but I think it is important to realize that BNB did come first. Second of all, CZ's been propping up from the beginning. The mechanism, even the public mechanism for it, is he buys BNB and burns it publicly on a regular basis based on whatever, how much trading fees there are or some shit. So like he's literally like tells the world he's propping it up. That's the public prop up we know. We don't know what kind of side market operations he's doing to try and buy it and increase the price.
But you can prop it up with your profits, your free cash flow, but you can't prop it up with customer assets. And that's the question of what's been happening. what's been happening as they've gotten down into the 200s is it appears that there have been times in June and since June where Bitcoin is trading at a discount on Binance relative to other platforms, other exchanges. And in those periods, suddenly the price of BNB goes up, like it's being bid up. If you put two and two together, they may not be, but they may be selling Bitcoin to bid up BNB and protect the price of BNB from dipping below some hidden liquidation point.
But
that's speculation, but that could be what's going on.
So one of the issues that FTX had issues with was FTT wasn't only traded on their platform, right? Like FTT was also traded on Binance, so you could start dumping. They didn't have
exactly what CZ did.
Yeah, that is exactly what it. BNB is traded on many different exchanges, right? If you want to talk about the manipulation on his own exchange, like, I mean, if he really wanted to, he doesn't even have to sell. Like, he doesn't have to do anything except change the numbers on the screen.
What's preventing other exchanges from offering BNB? Can't they just...
Like, how are we, like, this idea that like Bitcoin's down but BNB is up on his exchange is indicative of like him selling that pair on his exchange. Like, why does he even have to sell the customer deposit if he's going to commit fraud in that situation? Like, why even sell the customer deposits Bitcoin? Why not just, simulate a buy on just the BNB side and still hold the Bitcoin?
I just want to go back to the suit racism comment. That was I don't know if you made that
great comment.
Yeah, it was a great comment, but it's also fascinating because I think we talked about this previously weeks ago about I don't know if affinity is the right word, but I think we both have an appreciation for like the business, the pirates that CZ built. Yeah. And so it's just, think about how fascinating, like, is it almost just, I don't know, beautiful is not the right word, but like to watch the suits literally lose their money with FTX, the like goblin that was, and it lost. And then you have this guy out there that's making everybody whole. It's completely backed, and they're just attacking from every angle. And he's like, "Yeah, do you want your Bitcoin? Maybe it's a little KYC because the DOJ is I'm running right now, and I need to maybe check your driver's license." But it's a very and then without throwing names out there, whoever. We were about to put their list up on this thing. It's like these guys have been shit coining, and now they're gonna throw mud at this. It's just
that's true.
That's exactly what I meant by suit racism, by the way. But I
just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to define it in case.
I just look. CZ's obviously propping up the price of BNB. Now, it comes back, and look once again. I would not trust any money on Binance. I don't trust any money on any custodians, period. Hold your own fucking Bitcoin. But like CZ was a Bitcoiner first, understood the power of Bitcoin, and then became a shitcoiner because he can make a ton of fucking money. SBF was a fiat maxi from the beginning. And why do I say this again? First of all, I honestly do believe that SBF thought FTT was like sound collateral for some fucking reason. Like he started to like believe his own fucking shit. I really don't think CZ believes BNB is solid collateral. I think he realizes BNB is this little Ponzi token that he's like fucking just able to print money from. So if he does have loans on it, which he's said many times that he doesn't, I don't expect them to be significant size loans. Like he might be taking loans out on Bitcoin, like the best collateral in the world, but I doubt he's taking significant, leverage on the BNB. And then the second assumption that's made from the SBF comparison is that SBF was such a fiat maxi that his FTT loans were based on the US dollar value of the FTT loan. Why are we assuming that's the case if CZ loaned against BNB? Why isn't he using the BTC pair? And why isn't the BTC pair what needs to be defended and not the fiat pair?
Yeah, good points, fair points. And we were talking about this on the last trade of it may be that Binance has survived this long because CZ's got like a good angle on this. He knows how much drawdown to expect. BNB could be like a leverage play. You're saying a Ponzi, and how long can that keep going? Maybe it can keep going for as long as you pick a liquidation level to lever up to the next bull market that doesn't actually get triggered, and what could be different this time is that the regulatory clampdown is happening at the same time that BNB is at a low point, and it may be that tips the balance now for Binance and makes something that is a model that worked to help them stair step above. In Bitcoin terms, their BNB token's value has stair stepped up and to the right, and maybe now they've taken on more risk than they realized because the clampdown is happening at the same time. They've been cut off from the U.S. dollar, and that hurts their business significantly. And that's also happening at the same time that they're being,
you got to isolate, right?
That's it's all related in terms of business risk.
No, but like, look, so like I see people speculating like, oh, like Binance is definitely going to fail because you can't withdraw to euros in Europe. It's like, no, it's like he loses his fucking banking access, lines up completely with running a fucking shadow financial system. Like that is not like the regulators going after him is not proof of insolvency. It's
right, but it's reason to believe that his top line will take a hit to some extent. Maybe it's a 20% hit, a 40% hit in terms of revenue. And, if they are levering up, if the proof of reserves is a sort of hidden hint that they have liabilities that they're not talking about, maybe a hit to their top line isn't part of the model that they base their assumptions on for where their liquidation point is.
So the 212 number that came out of fucking nowhere, didn't that get breached? What happened?
It did get breached. So an analyst was telling me that snooping around on the chain, they were seeing that $10 million increments were being sold and bidding up BNB. What's possible is that Binance controls their own liquidation, so they might have run through that liquidation point and given themselves some time to bid that price back up. They control the show. So
could be.
I don't know. Yeah, and it's also possible it's also possible they've been closing some of those leverage positions, or just enough to lower that price, because it was 220 in June, and then a month ago.
June.
Yeah, I need something clarified. Are Jesse and I considered suit racist?
No, I'm mostly talking about maybe Jesse, but I'm mostly talking about the new group of people that all got rugged on FTX.
I will say,
it's like a very Tether truther thing, right? It's like is people go, Tether's breaking the law, they're a fraud, they're insolvent, right? CZ's breaking the law, they're a fraud, they're insolvent, and they just make that jump.
It seems to be becoming clear that Tether might be one of the most profitable businesses on the face of the earth.
Yeah, Tether's doing great. Tether's doing awesome. But for that point, like, Tether trades at a premium, because a tiny premium over time on average, versus the US dollar, because it's better than the US dollar. It has more utility than the US dollar, and that reflects in the price. But then with Binance, like, there are other signals too of executives leaving, and them having
you're
thousands
mixing
of
it up
employees.
again.
But this is business risk. This is
like of course, like imagine you're a buttered up suit, right? And you go into Binance US, and the founder of Binance US is like, yes, we are actively breaking US security laws. Like,
what was the thing they said on Signal? On Signal, it's like, oh,
no, it was in Slack. They said it in Slack. They're like, we are egregiously breaking US dollars.
That's completely different. Like, you have to isolate that, I think, in this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse, that is a very fair point, in the sense of, like, somebody leaving as an exec has nothing to do with the liquidation price of the 220.
No. But a bunch of people leaving, a bunch of people getting fired, the auditors pulling out and retracting their statements about Binance's financials.
Who are the auditors?
Some firm in France,
this is the same shit you hear about Tether. It's like, why doesn't Tether get a Big Four audit? It's because the Big Four will not fucking touch Tether with a 12-foot pole, because it's a fucking illegal business.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tether's a good example of like what we talked about, Bitfinex and Tether. And when there's a hole and you have a profitable business, you just figure out a way. Like if there was a hole and Binance went and said, "Hey, we can make ourselves whole by issuing something," the market will swoop in and take that next day, and then they're back.
Who are the people that are holding 700,000 Bitcoin on Binance?
Well, that's actually the point I was going to bring up. Like, Matt, you mentioned earlier that they're massive in Africa and Latin America. And from what I understand, a lot of those users like use Binance as their bank. They have Binance Pay, which I believe is separate from the exchange, but there's some interaction there.
Payment method.
Yeah. And the point I'm trying to make there, I think, going back to the Binance to FTX comparison, I imagine the deposits on Binance are a bit stickier than they were on FTX.
Yeah, because it's
I think it's going to be much harder to do a bank run.
But for that matter, like it's possible that people
Flip that
think
out.
they have.
What do you say?
It's going to be harder to do a bank run. I like do. I know. I like to do a bank run.
Well, so the 700.
We're doing Bitcoin. We're doing bank runs.
The 700,000 Bitcoin that might just be what's there. It could be that customers collectively think that they have 1.4 million in Bitcoin. You know, like that 700 isn't necessarily.
There's no proof of liabilities. Reserves is a sham. It is good. Like we should be looking at the on-chain wallets. Like it's still helpful, right? Like I mean,
yeah.
You get the analysis. Like it's interesting to me that most of these suits were giving me shit about raising the alarm about Barry Silbert and Gemini. Which, by the way, they still haven't gotten their fucking money back. If you look at Gemini's wallets, it's there is a literal bank run going on. Like we can see the bank run going on chain. If you look at Coinbase's wallets, like the numbers are going down significantly. But then if you look at Bitfinex's wallets and Binance's, they're trending up. So you don't know what the liabilities are, but you can check trends and you can see the trends and you know compare and contrast those trends. I don't know. It's just all. I think there's a lot more bank runs are going to happen, both like in quote unquote crypto and also the traditional financial world. Like I think we're way not out of the woods yet in terms of the macro landscape. I just think it's interesting that so much of the conversation has been on Binance. When if you actually like start looking at the numbers and you start unpacking. And the other thing too, by the way. If Binance is insolvent, and everything you say about CZ is true, and we broke 212, so like we lost the whole house betting on 212 Binance coin, like a major stark difference between him and SBF is like he will do the good old fashioned like crypto exchange failure. Like that'll be a long ass process with withdrawals get worse and worse and harder. Like he's not going to declare bankruptcy 3 days after everything happens. Like go to mommy and be like, what do I do? And he's like, oh, you got to get lawyers in and you got to declare bankruptcy and like get all your papers in order so we could do a restructuring here and maybe we'll relaunch the business. He's not going to do that shit.
Yeah, I'd go as far as to say we'll see more bank runs, actual bank runs, and insolvencies before we see Binance.
Are we ready to tie up this Binance subject? Because this does provide a good segue to actual bank runs, which is something we do have on the list, and we have a chart
Marty,
to show.
Before we do that, we have Josh in the comments, and he wants to know. He's on the RHR.TV/stream on the Zap stream. He wants to know if it's intentional that you are sitting in the king chair and everyone else is in the pleb chair.
Yes. we need to stamp the hierarchy here via the chairs. This chair is just too comfy. I spent too much money on this chair not to sit in it. This is a pre-Nixon ripping us off the gold standard chair. It's built in 1960.
Do you want to tell Matt about the montage night last night?
Oh. What about? We went back. We were listening to old episodes of TFTC around the dinner table.
But there were 7 Bitcoiners, and none of them had heard the montage from the manic Marty in 17.
The original montage?
The original montage. They were everybody look. Yeah.
It is funny going. I mean, it was the first time I had listened to it in many years, and I said it on the last trade. It's a bit nostalgic, but it's also a little cringe how nervous I was. I was literally reading off a script.
If you want to talk about cringe, my favorite part is you can clearly tell like Marty was pressured a little bit to make it more crypto rather than Bitcoin. And
Yeah.
then like by episode 3 or 4, he's just like, fuck you. And it's just Bitcoin only. But like there's some crypto usage in the beginning.
Yes. Well, I went back and listened to episode 20 of TFTC, which is the first time that we sat down and recorded, and it was cringe because in the beginning we were referencing everything as like crypto Twitter, and we talked
One
a
of
lot
my
about crypto
episodes.
in the merch closet.
I brought a bottle of Macallan 15 over to Barstool Sports to record with Marty. And I expected us to be in this like beautiful, one of the best podcast studios in the world. And we're just, like surrounded by Barstool t-shirts and the fucking merch closet with handheld mics. See, everyone's a fucking scammer. That was one of my
that was one. I mean, speaking of scammers, that's when Matt was from Austin at the time. He was just visiting.
I worked like 3 blocks away.
Good times. 6 years. 6 years have come and gone. Yeah. But let's segue this into like actual bank runs. If you guys, I'm trying to figure out if we just got to force the segue because I recorded an episode with John Titus on TFTC a couple months ago, and he's really been digging into the exposure to what is FLHB loans or FHLB. They're not going to pull up
it's the housing fund or whatever.
Yeah.
That's like 90 billion or
It's
something.
already
crazy.
like 6 months to PSBTs.
Yeah, it took.
Probably got the acronym wrong.
Yeah, but we have a chart here, and it seems like people are like John Titus is the one who created this spreadsheet that's tracking this data. It looks like Charles Schwab has massive exposure to this FHLB loan facility, which is what led to the collapse of First Republic, I believe, and Signature
He
particularly.
just bought TD Ameritrade. Like my wife's like retirement accounts like got auto transferred to fucking insolvent Charles Schwab.
Where did you put this chart?
You had it up at the beginning. It's like an Excel sheet with green and yellow on it.
Okay.
So what are FHLBs or whatever?
Federal Housing Loan.
Well, what most people don't
Bonds,
realize,
maybe.
like as soon as you take a mortgage, the U.S. government essentially just buys the mortgage right away, regardless of your
Yes.
mortgage.
So Jesse,
Isn't like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac or whatever, like those are government-run operations, right?
yeah, and you should actually go listen to the last episode I recorded with Matthew Mazinxius, and we dove into the balance sheet of Freddie and Freddie, or Freddie and Fannie Mac, and
Remove
they
this
have,
chart. I feel like I can't see anybody.
they have like $7 trillion of liabilities. But Jesse, you're the one who put this chart forth. What are we seeing here?
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, this might have been from Dylan.
That's not a fucking chart. That's a fucking
Spreadsheet.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
put that in the shadows. It was
Do you know what's going
because
on?
it was
there?
in Dylan's update this week.
Oh, really?
I did see this chart. Long story short,
The banks are fucked.
this is what led to the downfall of like First Republic and Signature, and it looks like Charles Schwab, which
Yeah,
is
but Charles is probably too big to fail, right? Like they're just bailing everyone out, right?
I don't know. Do they have the ability to do that?
I did like a little cursor, and obviously this like I'm left bell curve on this shit. Like that's why I just stack sats. This is the beauty of Bitcoin. But like I did some like little research. So I guess like this kind of is a similar situation as UBS and Credit Suisse. Like Credit Suisse was failing. There was like an orchestrated buyout where UBS bought it. Now UBS has all their toxic shit on their balance sheet. And Charles, me and my good friend Charles Schwab,
Chuck.
I think he did the same thing with TD Ameritrade essentially. Like TD Ameritrade was failing, so they did like a backroom deal where they took over all of TD Ameritrade's clients. And the reason I was looking into it is because like a good old fashioned bank run is like quite obvious, right? It's like, okay, so I have, 120K in my account, and I'm under the 250K quote unquote insured limit. So the US government just comes in, prints money, like gives it to me. And if I'm over the 250, you just like hope it's too big to fail. And they either do some kind of organized buyout where like a bigger bank buys a smaller bank. But apparently Like none of these hold stocks for you. Like UBS holds stocks for you. Charles Schwab holds stocks for you. And like I couldn't wrap my head around like what are the second order effects if like a major broker goes down and like they were playing funny games and they don't have all the like they were rehypothecating the stock certificates that are in individuals' names that are completely I think they're completely separate from like the insurance FDIC shit.
Yeah, that only does.
Do you have any
deposits.
opinion on that? Any of you guys? Like I don't fucking know.
Well, it's my understanding like the ETFs, that's like how they make their money, right? Like they're able to compress the fees on an ETF, which is effectively like stocks within a basket, and then they're able to relend. But I don't know.
But I'm saying like okay, so like you hold your ETF or your Apple stock on Charles Schwab, and Charles Schwab goes bankrupt. Like, do those get like liquidated?
Well, they're
Or
working.
like sell pressure on the stocks.
No, I think they work with broker dealers and clearinghouses on the back end that actually hold those assets. And you'd probably have like a restructuring.
No one's self-custodying their stock certificates. Like
No.
people don't like filing cabinets with like Apple stocks.
I mean, well, this is the like essence of qualified custodian. Like there's supposed to be a segregation. There's supposed to be a segregation from this was like Charles Ponzi or whatever. Like there you have to segregate from like the asset manager versus the custody because of these like funny games that happen. But I don't know. I've never owned an equity.
We have Carlos saying, agreeing with Marty. It's like the clearinghouse holds the shares or something.
DTCC.
Yeah. Like a clearinghouse is connected to the DTCC.
And
DTCC
this
is like
is-
the
This
king
is where
clearer.
kind of just generally the accounting and controls are pretty well developed in this world. 100 years of trial by fire.
But
so,
isn't this what happened to Robinhood? In Citadel?
I'm unfamiliar with what
I thi-
happened to Robinhood.
No,
think-
all these things
I
like
think
whether
they're
Charles
offsides.
Schwab or Robinhood, they're like front ends to these clearinghouses.
No, I'm
that
saying
actually,
Robinhood stock. There was like more shares outstanding of Robinhood than existed. Like they had played funny games with the issuance or the amount. Like when everyone went to call, there was like more issues.
Yeah, well, this is the problem with like DTCC and like the clearinghouse pipes around it. It's like the actual clearing, the time it takes to clear these trades, like creates like a lot of confusion, and you have instances where you have more claims than actual stocks that have been issued out on the market. Brian, you have anything to add to this? Are you okay over there?
I'm good. Yeah, no, I have nothing to add there. I think what you're saying makes the most sense, Marty. Like it might just be a drawn out process, but ultimately the stock should be there. Like I don't think you can get rugged in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Brian
only,
was at a private bank. I just assumed he was going to be able to tell us.
well, but back to Charles Schwab, like the stat, I went back and read the tweet. So with the FHLB loans, they have 130% of their equity tied up in these short-term loans that are coming due recently. So they literally don't have enough equity in their company to cover the loans that they've taken out. And so that's why that tweet is signaling like, hey, we have a potential Lehman moment coming up with Charles Schwab.
Yeah, I mean Lehman's a good example, right? Because like Bear Stearns failed about 6 months, 7 months. Like if it lines up like that, it would just be ironic, I guess.
Well, we've been saying that all year. Like it seems
Yeah,
like that's
History rhymes sort of situation where the banking crisis and the BTFP that calmed the
tremor.
market. Yeah, it was a tremor that they got in front of. They printed enough money, or they created a blank check to just say, "Hey, market, it's all going to be okay. You don't need to have runs on these regional banks."
Right, they hit everything beneath the surface, but didn't
Right,
actually.
and that papers it over for a while. But meanwhile, the Fed has continued to raise interest rates. I don't know how much over the last 6 months, but 50%, 50 bips, something like that. And that's how the tide is continuing to go out. And so these Charles Schwab may be swimming naked here, and that as that time rolls over, where they have to come up with the money to roll these loans, or they may be overexposed versus what they're expecting.
The one thing that is very different from 2008 is that after Bear Stearns, they didn't preemptively bail out every remaining bank. which is what they did in this situation with that buy the fucking pump program.
Yep. Because there was a semblance of capitalism still back then. Like that we had such a drawn out fight over TARP, the bank bailouts. That was all $1 trillion, all of that. And we literally have printed $1.3 trillion in new debt in the last 2 months.
It's embarrassing the amount of capital I hold in the regulated financial system.
No, you
like
should,
personal, like
it would be embarrassing if you had a lot of money in it. Like the fact that you don't.
but we're on the other side of that. I think if most would think, I would imagine most bank accounts are, running on the dollar side.
Definitely on this show.
Yeah, on this show.
Here's the problem, right? Is like, with Bitcoiners, obviously, like we think Bitcoin is our dry powder. But if we are slow rolling into a global recession, depression, and I talked to Marty about this on Rabbit Hole Recap last week. If you go back and roll the tapes, like in February 2020, March 2020, ironically, like that's when Bitcoiners were like this virus is going to kill everybody, whatever. We were obviously wrong about that aspect, but before the market reacted and before like everything started taking a hit and people were like, oh shit, we're fucked. Like we had been talking about it for so long that it almost got boring by the time it happened. And then it happened. And I kind of feel like we're slow rolling into this thing where we think, because we're in this fucking bubble, that everyone agrees that we're in a recession right now and agrees that shit looks bad on the macro level. But most people are in fucking denial. And so the issue you have on your hands is, I think I called it the temptation to trade. The issue you have on your hands is like, where do you actually put your money? I remain steadfast in my belief that that's Bitcoin. But if you're talking about like a traditional person, like just a non-Bitcoiner or pre-coiner, and they have like a shit ton of fucking Apple stock, they have like their 5 Airbnbs or what, I don't know what people have their money in. Like, do they sell it and then put it in dollars in the bank that's going to get run on and lose value to inflation that's going to continue to run hot? Like, where do you put that money? And that is it's just like this crazy shell game where like you have nowhere safe to put your money except for Bitcoin. But even Bitcoin in the short term, like if we hit like a real bad situation, like who knows where the Bitcoin price is going to be at.
But even if the Bitcoin price goes down, I think the value prop there is the counterparty risk that has been eliminated. Even if the value of your Bitcoin goes down, you have access to your money, even if it is at a lesser purchasing power than it was before a price downturn.
Yeah, like imagine BNB like falls under $205, and then he sells all 700,000 Bitcoin on it.
Wait, so Matt, are you going to say that Binance won't collapse?
I'm not gonna. Like I said, like it could happen at any moment. There's issues there with the amount of attention that's being applied. Every custodian, I operate under the assumption that you can just wake up in the morning and like there's no banks exist, like no exchanges exist, like freaks become unruggable. Like you just need, like we live in a world filled with rugs.
There's one right here.
Rug in every room.
So what do we think? Do we get fireworks this fall in the banking sector?
All I heard is Matt's going to be trading this, and he's probably getting out of the Bitcoin position.
No. I talked to him off the ledge last week. What was the term you used?
There's a temptation to trade this.
Yeah.
I think okay. So there's been an uptick of in the media the phrase soft landing. So there's some clever metrics tracking how many times people are using the term soft landing versus hard landing. Soft landing is winning recently. Like people believe that we are seeing a soft landing, that the Fed has navigated a successful soft landing. And that just historically doesn't line up with this scenario. You can't raise rates from 0 to 5.5%, keep them there, and have bankruptcy starting to uptick in a big way and expect it to be a successful soft landing. Instead, it's the lag effect. For whatever reason, human psychology just doesn't seem to appreciate that when rates are raised, it takes 18 months for that to flow through to unemployment. And, we're 12 plus months into that. So it's not like we've navigated this situation through the expert maneuvering of the Fed. It's just that there's more time to come. And I anchor back to Stan Druckenmiller, who's, in my opinion, the best investor out there right in this day and age. And he's in the hard landing camp. He's saying that if you raise rates to higher for longer, that it creates stickier inflation and a higher likelihood of a hard landing crash. And his expectation is that happens sometime around 6 months from now. I think that's kind of my base case too.
No one crashes and then calls it a hard landing afterwards. Just FYI. Fucking
right.
No, but there are some data points that have come out in recent weeks to validate that thesis that higher for longer will lead to higher inflation, particularly in wages. I believe American Airlines employees just renegotiated their deal. I think they got like a 40% pay increase. UPS obviously was a big meme a couple weeks ago. Their drivers are getting $170K. And then I saw another tweet yesterday of like the average salary negotiation for new employees that has jumped something like 30 to 40% as well.
I mean, I think even if you're in the delusional soft landing camp, like it's a transitory soft landing, right? Like it's a short-term soft landing, and over the long term, it's a hard landing.
I'll go as far. It's literally all bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's bullshit from Matt was like kind of hedging we're on the way to a global recession. We are literally right in the middle of it. If you go anywhere and you hear like times are tough, people are laid off, and the soft landing is literally just like this, you just hear it and it gets incepted via like osmosis into people's brains. So like they don't think it's not as bad, or like they talk about it as it's not as bad, and it can get worse. That is definitely true. But right now it is not good out there. Like and you go again left bell curve, like when you go places, when you talk with people, especially not in the bubbles or circle that we've created for ourselves, but just in the people that are delivering goods and services in the economy. I told you, I went to go get the steaks yesterday. It was like double. I got hit twice.
Tell that story.
It's messed up because like Matt knows my like home setup. Like I'm out in the middle of the sticks, so like just by myself. Zoom in, just try to create like a contained environment that is, whatever. And then I come downtown, come visit my friends Marty and Parker in Austin, and get in and start get in the middle of society and go pick up steaks and grab a bunch of steaks. And the first thing this guy's like, "Man, can I come over?" It was like, but it was in a way that was like, "This is crazy what you're doing right now. Like you're buying all these ribeyes and these whatever we got, fillets." And so then. So that was the first hit, and then I go to the
the guy behind the counter asked if he could come chill.
Yeah, he was just like, "This is incredible. Like you look like you're having a."
Say yes.
It was a joke. Matt. No, it wasn't a joke, but he was joking. But anyway, so then at the checkout, there was a lady in the front that was elderly, and I guess it was like one of those roundup messages that says like, "Do you want to round up or not?
Do you want to support the kids or not?"
Yeah, exactly. And she didn't understand what was happening, so the guy's explaining it to her, and then she's like, "Oh, I'll do it today, but I usually never do it," and like kind of caught herself. And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, me neither." He's like, "The way things are right now," or made this comment about like how bad things were, like times were really tough. This is a checkout.
Yeah, like, fuck children, I need it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is that. Those are just like two, but every week.
Them over to dinner?
What's that?
Did you invite them over to dinner?
We had a lot of people over for dinner.
Maybe we could solve this if we just invited more people over.
I got an 8-person dinner at Ninja launched on me at like noon yesterday.
We can't.
You love hosting the family dinners. Did you host at your house?
Yeah, Michael slept over. It was a good night.
We need to
Wow.
Family home dinner.
Did you guys split a pillow, or how'd that work out?
I have a guest room that came off wrong. But no, I mean another anecdote data point, literally standing out behind this door with Andy from Crowd Health. We're like catching up. Like, how's your summer been? It's my first time in Austin in like a month. We're like looking out the door in the alleyway across the street, and there's some dude literally going through the trash at Pete Terry's, like looking for food. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
But that's just Austin.
The data point that popped out to me recently about like people are in pain, the middle class is in pain, is 12 million people canceled their Disney Plus subscription this quarter.
Jesse, we got to get a better example than the Disney
I love that
Plus.
one. No, like, because why do you do that? That's 10% of their subscriber base. Why did 10% of people decide this is the quarter to get rid of Disney Plus? It's because they're looking at their budget for the month and they're seeing.
Is it that, or is it like a woke boycott?
I mean, there's also like a bunch of like, there's way too many streaming services now, and like,
sure, but why do you tighten the belt? It's because you're going through tough times.
I go back to the one that St. Ange had about the Canadian lady that had the loaf of bread. She's like middle class, and that she needed a loaf of bread to make it through. Like that's the example. Like the Disney is these things are nice. Like
I'm a little bit concerned,
but that's ungrounded in data. I love data.
Look, I'm a little bit concerned, and this is not directed at you guys. It's mostly directed at Marty. That RHR is just going to turn into just like every week we just like talk about how prices increase. Like we know, like inflation is fucking ripping. Like people are having it bad. Like this has been incredibly obvious for quite some time. You know, like I don't like.
No, it's a good call.
We're not going to do that. We should move to the next subject, which is that they're trying to move the inflation target to 3%.
Should we talk about this news? Because this has to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah,
like the dollar breaking down.
The inflation target increasing to 3% was like chapter 3 of Mandibles.
But I hear you, Matt. We should talk Bitcoin. Let's
talk Bitcoin. Okay, let's talk Zaprite news.
Parker gave this to me just a second ago. We gotta drop fiat.
I mean, so Parker and Will announced that they joined Zaprite. They've been working with John here in the Commons and throughout Austin all summer. And they announced the partnership. They relaunched some new features earlier this week. There'll be a big presentation to end BitBlock Boom on Saturday. But if you read the blog post that Parker and Will co-wrote in the announcement of them joining the team, I really like what they're doing here is like taking everything that we're discussing in the world of fiat and what's going on with inflation into context. Like Parker, having had many discussions with him over the last several months, he has what I would define as an urgency to get tools into individuals' hands to be able to accept Bitcoin, to be able to accept better money as all this shit's going on. And Zaprite is a tool that enables that. And I do like this transition of Parker from Unchained, which really focuses on custody and long-term store of value, to Zaprite, which really enables people to accept Bitcoin as payment so that they can protect themselves against the inflation that Matt doesn't want to talk about anymore.
Yeah, I think it's I'm not scared to talk about inflation. It's just repetitive. I think it's indicative.
Chicada.
Of a larger trend, right? Where like Parker, it's pretty cool to see. I mean, the Parker is like very firmly came out of like this gold 2.0. Bitcoin as a store of value asset kind of class of Bitcoiners. And now he's, very focused on this idea of bootstrapping a circular economy, which is just incredibly bullish to see. I mean, no one should ever bet against Parker on anything. And as someone who has felt extreme urgency, probably too extreme urgency on bootstrapping a circular economy for years now, it's nice that I could take my foot off the gas a little bit and then just let Parker, drive at like 150 miles an hour down the highway on this path. So bullish.
Yeah. Parker, we had been not as much as with Marty, but like talking about this idea that he had about just making it easier from the payment side to just getting it the transaction if you want to receive goods and services and not have to sign up and have your own, because we all have our own existing infrastructure when it thinks from a personal perspective of how you custody your exchange you use. So why do you need to actually go out and sign up for an initial service, and there's an inherent friction involved versus having this middleware. And we'd been talking about it for a while, and then when I saw the blog post and the Zaprite and all that, it made complete sense because you mirror that need in the market And then on the other side of like what he talks about, and I was listening to one of the old, it was from the Matt, where I guess we were all here at BitBlock Boom 2020, and what was it like? The quote was like, "If you give a mouse a cookie, he'll give you triple C bonds." Like it was a
Don't know where you're going with that.
it was a talk basically on the failing. It was a talk on the failing of the dollar, like about the dollar hyperinflating and that it's all on different curves. And basically, at that point, coming 3 years later, and to see it in real time when you go to the store and you see the numbers in double-digit inflation. I laugh because we've been talking about inflation, but you see the double-digit, like you basically see the breaking of money ultimately, and that it's at the most. It is very important to start having the infrastructure in place, because where I think this is really bullish is that I don't think a lot of people are going to be ready to accept Bitcoin, or people want to pay, but it's important to have the rails ready, because when it does happen, you don't want to be like, scrambling and trying to figure it out. And so that's like the real like big thing. It's like if you're out there and you're a business and you're just been curious about it, you don't know what the demand is, you should really go like, look, it's easy to sign up. You get it set up. You can have all these different ways that you can act. There's more integrations and also more ways to accept the payment, because you never know when people start asking, and it's just a better rail for a number of reasons to actually accept the money. And then it's, so to Matt's big point, it's like non-KYC. You don't have to deal with the exchange. You can hold it if you want to sell back to the market. It's the kind of bodega thing that you guys have talked about. I've always believed like we end up with bodegas that are basically they're their little Binance without the rugging.
As a longtime New Yorker, big bodega bull.
Yeah, bodega bull for your BTC. It'll be beautiful. You go to the bodega, they know you got the spread. You buy
Bodegas fix this.
Bodegas fix this. Yeah, you get your bagel and your BTC or your pear. But anyway, so yeah, bullish on Zaprite and what they're doing.
Like the strategy should be build the tools and education, and people will come when they realize the need. And we can't you can't build out the tools during Mandibles.
Yeah.
Like they need to be ready. Otherwise, then Mandibles happens, right? You don't have an alternative path that you can take to opt out and protect yourself.
Yeah, and I think
this is way bigger than Bitcoin. I think that goes across the board in terms of freedom tech.
Yeah, and I think Zaprite strategy too is like it's a nice bridge because it does have Stripe integration. So if you do want to accept fiat payments, like it's a good way to like sort of Trojan horse like Bitcoin payments. Zaprite's just a better payment software at the end of the day, whether you're accepting dollars or Bitcoin. Like having that optionality out of the box could be a strong selling point for them.
Yep.
Disclaimer: Zaprite's a 1031 portfolio company.
Go to 1031.vc to see a full list of our portfolio companies.
Brian, anything to add to this? You've been quiet, man. You okay?
I'm just letting you guys run the show. It's your show.
Okay.
I don't want to be overbearing.
You're certainly not being that.
I want to talk about Tornado Cash.
Yes, we have to talk about this is actually probably the biggest story of the week. Everybody's talking about Binance. So, who was it? Department of Justice officially indicted two of the Tornado Cash founders, both named Roman, with facilitating money laundering, knowingly facilitating money laundering via Tornado Cash. And this is going to be a big case that's going to set a pretty big precedent one way or the other, because essentially I don't think there's any actual proof that was in the filing that was released yesterday that proves that they had any intent to actually facilitate money laundering for criminals. They just simply wanted to provide a privacy tool to people using Ethereum. And I guess the DOJ is running with the argument that if you're going to provide privacy, you are knowingly enabling money laundering at the end of the day.
As a refresher, like even for me, is what was the relationship with them and it? Were they just like maintaining the software, or was it because it wasn't a custodial?
They wrote the smart contract and then had a front end to access it.
They wrote the smart contract, so they were the developers. And then for a little while, it was running where they could update it. And then in 2020, they pushed an update that was like the forever update. Was like they could not stop the contract after 2020. It was non-custodial. They did have they had a fucking token attached, obviously, because who doesn't nowadays? They had a token attached. They took VC money for the token, and the token had some kind of accrual mechanism that the more people that used Tornado Cash, like if you were holding the token, you made money off of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, is this pretty similar to a situation that like a Samurai wallet could find themselves in?
Well, that's, I think, again, going back to this case, will set a pretty important precedent one way or the other, because it seems like the DOJ isn't really basing the indictment in logic. They're really just trying to.
That's what I was going to ask, is how do you prove the intent there?
Exactly. And so that's like the big worry with this case.
They had some chat messages that were like, we put, they like had the founders like talking to the venture firm, and they were
About
saying
KYC, right?
Well, that we put we put an IP block on the web page, so that if you're coming from a sanctioned country or prohibited country, you can't use the web page, but like people could still use the smart contract without the web page block. And they like knowingly accepted that as a possibility. The other thing to keep in mind is using that web page, they were actually filtering like the OFAC sanctioned list of Ethereum addresses, but that didn't protect them. So they attempted to comply. They bent the knee, and they still got this thrown at them. So these were two of the founders. The third founder is still in jail in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, I believe, awaiting trial in the courts over there in addition to it. But yeah, I mean, it's not like, if you care about freedom, this is a complete overreach, regardless of how you feel about Ethereum or that project. I mean, it's a straight up attack on privacy. And it is a very dangerous precedent, because it's the first time that an operator of a non-custodial privacy tool has been targeted. This was strictly not custodial, which has been the major, Whirlpool, Samurai, and Wasabi are centralized, but they do not take custody.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
that's the major argument for, I don't want to say compliance, right? But
on that thread, it's where, to your point, it's almost like, well, what's to say if this is a legitimate, precedent? Or they make it a legitimate precedent, then Signal could facilitate.
Well, it seems like Samurai, I don't know, maybe it's coincidental, but it seems like Samurai has some urgency to release their distributed Whirlpool coordinator.
I don't know how that works, though, for what it's worth. Do you know how that works?
Not off the top of my head.
But yeah, they tweeted about it.
Yeah. So yeah, Samurai Dev, or it was TD Dev, sent out a tweet earlier this week that like decentralized Whirlpool 1.0 is coming soon.
I do wonder if there's a discrepancy, like the key argument, and obviously, like Wasabi has intentionally, they preemptively complied with OFAC stuff, and like they're screening input addresses, and they're using chain surveillance, and they're adding all their inputs to it. But like I said, I mean, Tornado Cash was doing similar stuff, and it didn't protect them. The argument has always been that, Bitcoin isn't being transferred. These coordinators aren't transferring Bitcoin. They're transferring messages. They're transferring signed messages. They're coordinating Bitcoin transactions that they're not a part of, and they're not taking custody of. I do wonder if the way a court looks at a smart contract, I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't, but the difference between a smart contract versus just like a relatively basic message transfer protocol. Because like, does a smart contract take custody? Like, it's hard to like contemplate in your head like what a smart contract is.
And does a court even grok that distinction?
But then last but not least, like, it's important to realize that Tornado Cash was doing significant volume, because most hacks are happening on Ethereum. So they had like a shit ton of fucking hack volume that was going through it. I think Chain Analysis, the company, which is a chain surveillance firm, said that it was like only 7% illicit activity. But in terms of numbers, like volume numbers, compared to anything that's happening. Compared to volume numbers on Wasabi and on Samurai, it like was massive. Billions of dollars was going through it. And I think the ultimate lesson is, if something is centralized, and it goes back to the Binance Tether stuff, if something is centralized, and it hits real product market fit, like finds massive success and is providing any kind of freedom to the end user that's outside of the US financial system, it doesn't matter what the laws say in the books or anything. Like, they're just gonna fucking, launch a hypothetical cruise missile at you and just take you fucking out. And that's what happened here. That's what happened with BitMEX. I mean, I think the postmortem of BitMEX is that they actually got a great deal. Like, they got like a $10 million slap on the wrist as like a cost of doing business. But it happens to all these guys, right? And that's the target on Binance's back. Once again, Binance, offers privacy from the U.S. government to a lot of people, presumably. We don't know what they're handing over, but they should be considered. Any custodial wallet is essentially breaks your links on chain. So yeah, I think that's the lesson. I think the lesson is, this is why it's important to build tools that are not centralized and don't have that central point of failure, because that's the vulnerability. That's where people get pressured. And by the way, Tornado Cash still works. Like, you can use the smart contract today. They can put these guys in jail for 100 years, and it'll still work behind the scenes. But because they were the face of it, because they were profiting off of it, they were made an example of.
Yeah. Zach is saying in the comments on YouTube that he's currently running the Whirlpool coordinator on testnet. So it seems like things are happening there. But yeah, no, I mean, just broadly speaking, just like dig deeper into like the essence of what's going on here is a massive attack on privacy and civil liberties in the digital age. These governments are rapidly losing control on the financial system, on the narrative of their individuals' confidence in their ability to actually facilitate anything efficiently. And so this is what happens when governments and institutions lose control. They grasp for more power by really trying to send a message like, hey, don't step out of line, get back in line, be a good sheep. You can't transact privately.
I was looking at this Marty Jones hat. I didn't know how far you were going to take this one, but it was.
I mean, these people hate you. They think they're better than you. They do not. They do not want you to have privacy. I mean, speaking of Alex Jones, I mean, I think his call last week seems to be coming to fruition. I mean, it seems like they're lining up to bring back mask mandates, coerced vaccinations, and lockdowns. Let's
pivot. Matt doesn't like when we talk.
But it's again, that's another symptom.
When Marty says they, he means the blue check.
I said Marty Jones, and he goes and references Alex Jones.
No, but it should make you angry, because like everything, like the last trade conversation, this conversation, like there are very important things happening here, and the chilling effect that something like this case could have if it sways the wrong way will be massive, and will slow down the ability for individuals to build out the Bitcoin network in a way that they feel safe, and will deter people from adopting it, which is completely nefarious considering the fact that we all know, we won't bring up the I word, but the fiat system is on very fragile foundations right now, and they're trying to close the exits and prevent us from adopting a technology that can help us protect ourselves from the ramifications of that failure.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'd say though is like, how do you play this? In the reference to like these things they're gonna try to do something, whether it's that or something else. It's like you change your geographic footprint, like where you should be. And we all know people that are comfortable even now in this, and that we try to work with. And you know, we're obviously in Texas, Matt's in Tennessee. I think two solid spots. But you should really like not be complacent, because it's something I always think of, like when it was the framework of, I think about like Bitcoin and like what would cause when people, like even my wife's like, maybe this thing doesn't, like what's the backup plan? It's like, well, what would cause it to not work, right? In the same way, like, or what would cause it to go the other direction as you have everything going in a trajectory up and to the right? In the same way of like, we're in a bull market for statism, and until we get a lot worse, we'll get better. And so you have to protect and like act accordingly. And so part of this stuff is like be in jurisdictions and areas that are going to be as friendly as possible. There's no pure like haven, but there are areas to go to.
You got Upper West Side Brian squirming over here.
Yeah, we gotta fix. We gotta fix that. I gave him 12 months before he's in Texas.
You know,
Texas is in the cards. Need a farm. Need some land. Need some open air. I think you're right.
Brian, you know Mandibles is set in New York, right?
Yep. I've read it, unlike Marty.
There we go.
I read it.
Hey, bullshit, you didn't read it.
I won't touch that book with a 10-foot pole.
Oh, you're about to trigger my.
Well, anyway, the thesis is Mandibles than Bitcoin standard.
But like you said earlier, if we get these tools into people's hand, maybe Mandibles doesn't happen to the extent that it did in the book that I definitely read.
You didn't read the book. It's set in New York. We don't know. Like, some people obviously took it better than the people in New York took it. It's set in a failed city.
Is New York a failed city? How's New York these days, Brian?
It's nice where I live, to be honest, but it's different. It's different than having land. Like, you're not in the city of Austin. You're like outside Austin, so it's a little different than any super urban area is going to be different than having your own autonomy and land. So I think that's the real benefit. It's not necessarily like West Coast, East Coast. I think it's like super urban area versus
rural.
Exactly, yeah.
But I would go further than like it's more about when all this stuff happened in 2020, who were the first two states that completely pushed back and were wide open? Is Florida and Texas, independent of being in land or not. Like, you just got people got to do what they did. That's why Austin,
we were talking about
Austin, the Bitcoin capital of the world, had Bitcoin BitDev start where everybody was afraid to do it, and then people just started coming, and they just started moving because they could just do what they could do.
I was one of those people. But we were discussing this last night too. There are pockets in these blue states. Like, I lived in one throughout COVID in South Jersey. But
they're surrounded by people that hate you, so you're not in a very good long-term spot.
There's plenty of land, plenty of food. We were in Cape May County. We were going to restaurants. People weren't abiding by the mask mandates. I was going to gyms. I was going to farms. Like, there are these pockets.
Matt, how do you feel about the pockets?
The pockets.
Like the pockets.
Sunshine. No, I mean, the problem with the Northeast is the benefit of the Northeast is that it's super dense population wise, and the negative is that it's super dense population wise. So, shit hits the fan. In Mandibles, like, one of the family members he bought land upstate New York, called it the Citadel. Everyone made fun of him. She literally wrote the fucking book for us. Like, what happened? Like, when shit hit the fan, there was like 20 million people within, extreme walking distance of his property, right? And you have to deal with that situation in a chaotic time.
Yeah. I have a friend actually who his family had a ranch right outside of Houston, and when they had that big hurricane 10 years ago or whatever, they dealt with a lot of trespassers on their land, to a point where it made them realize that if shit hits the fan, this is actually not a safe, distance from the city. So they ended up selling that piece of land and buying something further away.
Exactly. And if you do the math in the Northeast, it's just really hard to get away from like New York, Boston, Philly.
I mean, yeah, New Jersey's the Nigeria of the United States, most densely populated.
Yeah. Exactly.
But Marty, who's going to defend these areas? Aren't you the tip of the spear for Philly?
I don't know. I do want to go back and defend Philly. Is it bad that I love where I came from?
No, not at all.
That's the fucked up thought about all of this. It's like it's going to tear families apart. Like,
look, if you want to
I'm from LA.
One's going to stop you.
I'm from California, and California is now talking about implementing like wealth tax and an exit tax for people who move away from California to get away from a wealth tax.
Not only that, they're talking about a retroactive wealth tax or exit tax too, which is insane.
Keep in mind, by the way, the U.S. has this.
Yes.
Yeah, true. But you know,
We live in a free country, gentlemen.
That's what our grandparents let happen.
yeah, it is painful to think about the amount of freedom that I read something recently about in 1900 the only interaction the average citizen had with the U.S. government was through the post office. That was it. There was no income tax. There was nothing else. You just lived your life and you used the post office as your government service, and how things have crept since then.
We need a return. Could you imagine
Anyway,
if the only interaction we had with the U.S. government was the post office, which none of us use anymore? That'd be incredible.
Yeah, I just life is too short. Like it's gonna take decades. Like if you want to fight for Philly, it's gonna fucking take decades to turn that ship around. Like, just know what investment you're getting into.
That's what I was explaining yesterday. We had, I think everybody at the table wasn't from Texas, or like even visiting. Like they were just from out of town, and they were coming from either like SF or New York or Jersey. And it was the same conversation where I was in your shoes explaining, like, sure, go back, but like it's like this does not end up well for anybody. And it sucks. It's not like just trying to position it. And I think what ultimately happened, we were in a group text about how to play land and some stuff. And I was realizing that along with what's happening now, but like maybe going back to these places is we've gotten complacent in the same way. Like we're thinking about the banks, or not we, but the market is like, oh, the banks are going to be okay. And then the rug just happens again. And it's like, and so that's how I think we're in this lull right now where it's like, oh, everything's fine. It looks okay. It's like, no, it really isn't. Like it isn't. And what happened in 2020, imagine being in that scenario again, but at a different situation. Like that was probably just the
higher stakes.
Yeah. That was just like the little taste.
It's a classic strategy in authoritarianism, right? You push. You wait till people push back. Then you like give them a little bit. You let them like simmer down, and then you push. Like I've seen that to the extreme with our Canadian friends, right? Like Canada turned really shit. They were all like getting ready to move, like getting all their shit in order, like figuring out how to move. Bitcoiners, have options if you hold a decent amount of Bitcoin. And then like shit simmered down, and they're like, moving's hard. I gotta switch countries. I gotta do this. I gotta do that, and they just like simmer back down into it, right?
Yeah. That's exactly right. We get complacent, and then we think it's all there, and that's what I was saying about the pool, because we have conversations with colleagues and individuals that are kind of on the fence, and it's really like it's like you said, it's family, and then it's the dynamic of how do you like sway and get the side, because there's these ties to these places, but there's ultimately like it's very Darwinistic in the sense of like if you don't make the right call, it could be
fatal.
Yeah.
It's tough, man. It's really emotional. For me personally, I mean, I can come from, I'm sure you feel this too, Matt. Yeah, I've got a big family that I love dearly and care about. And I mean, I experience it when I go home in the summers. Like it's hard leaving that. And then, thinking about if the shit hits the fan and they're all going through that and I'm over here. I don't know.
Yeah, but like if you run it through your head, it's like if shit hits the fan and I'm visiting family in the Northeast, like my immediate strategy is try to get the fuck out of there. It's like what? It's like, oh, like God, good thing I'm here when shit hits the fan. It's like, come with me, I'm out. Like there's no fucking number one rule of thumb is like if shit actually does hit the fan, is like you just want to get out of the population centers. Like you do not want to be there.
And this sick thing keeps happening where my wife's family's like up in the Northeast, and I go up there and there's always little like fire alarms. The last one was like the fire that was just a fire and everything was red, but there was no fire. The pictures like, we need to go home. Like this is not, these things don't happen.
I mean, last time I was in the Northeast, there was like a fake Russian coup going on. And I was like, oh fuck, like I'm just get nuked.
How about that?
I'm just gonna get nuked while I'm visiting the Northeast, and no one's gonna fucking hit Tennessee, right? I don't know, maybe.
I don't know. That's where the nukes started.
That's where the nukes are.
Did you see that guy? Did you see that guy?
They shot him down.
That no one knew, Wagner or whatever, and now everyone knows, and then he's dead.
The greatest, as a former hot dog salesman, he is something to aspire to. You should go from a hot dog salesman to running a militia. and then eventually get shot down
Marty,
flying
what's
from
your-
Moscow to St. Petersburg.
Is that a psyop? Did that happen? Like what?
I mean,
what's
there
your-
was videos of the plane falling. Was he on the plane? I don't know. Like,
No, did the coup happen?
oh, I think it was manufactured psyop.
Speaking of psyops, you said
They're
video-
actually, no, if they actually did shoot him down, maybe like it did happen, and Putin was like, you know what?
Does he even exist? Is he even a person?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, he might not be a person, but speaking of coups and not
Yeah,
being
he
able
was
to
he was
trust-
he was talked about pretty glowingly in the hot dog scene 10 years ago. We knew about him.
This reminds me
Hero
of
of the
India, the space landing on India. Logan, can you pull that?
video up?
Like this is just like the epitome of you can't believe anything anymore.
It's tough out there on the internet streets. Yeah.
I don't know if he's a real person.
Yeah, he may not be, to be honest. It's
What?
he had like a 3-week arc of he was a coup
Yeah.
and then he died in a plane crash. And
They're like, this is the most powerful person in Russia that's not Putin. Never heard of him in a million years.
Matt, I want to.
Hear about him, and then he does a coup, and then he dies, and he like backed out of the
Crisis
coup right
actor.
before it happened.
I'm gonna
And he
keep the streak going. I'm gonna give myself credit. We haven't been succumbing to the psyops. We didn't fall for the Wagner group. We
I
didn't
don't know
fall
what
for,
I'm looking for because I don't know what you're
Well,
talking
we didn't fall for LK99.
I'm pretty sure that everything is a psyop.
I'll
is
send
a
it to you,
psyop.
Logan.
Tom doesn't want to use the word psyop.
Is
anymore.
Maui a psyop?
In which direction?
There's too many directions.
There's so many weird. It's
Probably,
hard.
but can you break it down for us? Like what? Like I'm not sure the angle.
RFK did put out a tweet about the math on Maui versus Ukraine. We're sending 25 billion to Ukraine. If you spread that out over Maui citizens, it's 500,000 per person.
But that's not. Once again, we have to isolate the two things. Like that's just government's corrupt, and that's par
Yeah,
for the
and that's the point, I guess.
I'm sending him the other
War
one.
machine.
Yeah, Maui's too much.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's just. I mean, there's something.
We're not gonna
It's
attack Maui.
all I know is that it stinks. It stinks. I don't know what happened, but it stinks.
I feel like sometimes RHR is like it's like Always Sunny episodes, like the gang solves Maui.
When Logan pulls this video up, I think
The only thing, yeah, go on.
it's better to. I would rather. I think it's easier to know who would say this is real.
Is it supposed to be a dramatization, or like are they claiming it's an actual video?
The only
I
thing that
gotta figure out how to play this. If you
Just
send me
download
a file,
it. If you download it, or I don't know if there's a tweet.
you got this, Logan, you'll figure it out. The only thing that what's for sure in Maui is that it's an absolute tragedy for the people that lost their
Yes.
homes. And
Yeah.
Tons of
Their
people
lives.
died, way more than they're reporting.
Yep. It's pretty.
Fire's no fucking joke.
जी हाँ आप अपनी स्क्रीन पे देख सकते हैं कि हम लैंडर मॉड्यूल
People are applauding. Let
लैंडर
us all wait to hear from the
Is this
Secretary
like some
Department
infrared
of
camera?
Space and Chairman ISRO, Shri S. Somnath.
लैंडर मॉड्यूल पूरी तरह से
That they landed on the
Safely
moon.
That they went to the moon.
There was like a
Nothing-
space invader.
Oh my
plane.
goodness.
No one actually believes that.
Nothing has ever made me believe that space is fake more than that video.
Right? No, that's just a joke video, right? Like, did the Indian Space Commission or something?
It's got to be a joke.
That was a real
It's a great
video.
joke.
It's a real video.
I
Could we-
see.
what-
Everything's a psyop. I
Yeah,
don't
but
know.
how do you know? How
I
do
don't
you
know.
that was real?
Yeah.
Where did the prime minister tweet it out?
I saw
Yeah, like-
come across like disclosed TV telegram, which like they tend to be
Tanguma,
pretty.
you can't just, like Tanguma's like on iMovie, just like creating like space invaders. Like everything's a psyop.
One of my favorite things about the psyop things is when you go to Marty to ask him about something, there's already like 3 levels that he's already looked into it, and like the one that comes to mind is last year October, and we were having the conversation about nukes in Russia.
Oh,
And like if something bad would happen and what it would look like, and we go to Marty and we're like explaining like how we're debating this, like could something happen in the States, and Marty doesn't even like acknowledge the question. He goes, nukes aren't real.
I mean, I was trying to keep that one like off air.
Would you guys
Yeah, I'm
think?
not going down the nukes are real rabbit hole. It's potentially true. Who knows?
Marty,
But
do
you
think-
said space wasn't real, so I thought you were
That,
gonna be okay.
there's a big conspiracy that space is fake, and like if you look at that video, they're like, "Yeah, we went to space."
I
It's
thought
like,
you were gonna be okay with it.
I don't,
Should we poll the room? Like, Tanguma, do you think nukes are real?
I'm like 50-50 now.
Oh boy.
Can I hear some of the argument? Is there a thesis there?
I mean, the argument. And to be clear, like I'm not saying this is true. I like to understand. I like to understand the theories, and the theory is that nukes. It's pretty obvious they are potent psychological tools to quell people and make sure that they're sufficiently scared. And people claim that the nukes that were dropped on Japan were actually napalm bombs.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is
All right,
again. I want to be clear.
Obviously not obvious.
I want to be clear.
To
I was
quote our friend
joking.
Jerome.
I was joking when I said that last October, and I just want to like this is the theory. That people
Marty,
have
Marty,
out
put a
there.
percentage on it. Like, what are the percentage chances that?
I mean, in the clown world we live in, like 15 to 20.
Oh wow.
So you're at 15 to 20. Tanguma's at 50%. It sounds like Jesse's a nuke believer.
I'm gonna say that the two greatest scientific achievements of all time are the nuclear bomb program, like that as a scientific achievement, and landing on a man on the moon. Those are the two greatest things we've ever accomplished.
I definitely don't believe the moon.
Yeah, we don't believe that we landed on the moon.
Well, let's
I'm on an island, man, because I think it's the greatest thing we ever did. I think that's number one, and I
Have
think
you heard of Stanley
Manhattan
Kubrick?
Project is number two.
Yeah, go what?
What is
it?
The Shining? The
Room
Shining.
212.
The Shining.
Yeah.
for the record, first off and foremost,
I can't believe we got this far off the rails.
I believe nukes are real. I'm like, there's no qualifications there, no asterisks.
Yeah,
like, I just think nukes exist.
How about the
And-
moon landing?
and they blow things up big. That's my scientific opinion. With the moon landing, we have to unpack two things. Do you think space is real? I think it's the first question.
Again, it's another. I think the overarching thing to take out of this is that it is so fucked up that we even have to have these conversations. So the government's lied to us so much, so you have to like leave it like maybe like I don't know, like they have lied to us
That's
so
really
much.
hard.
Yeah.
Marty, percentage. What's the percentage that space is real to you?
100%. Like I think so.
Okay, so Marty believes space is real. Tanguma, is space real?
Sure. I actually don't know. I don't know anything anymore.
No, that's the point I'm trying to make. Is like the government has lied to us so much and on such a large scale that you like just inherently have to be.
Yeah, and when I
skeptical.
said the nuke thing, it was more of like there's this whole overarching like past 50 to 75 years, and then we can even go back further of what we thought was true was written, and there's ways the things we've seen the past 2 years, let alone 10 years, and we've experienced to know not be true, and then written and codified as just to be. And so what are the other things that aren't? And then that's how the nuke thing came up. That's how the nuke thing came up, and that's how the conversation around like it is a scare it was like a fear mongering thing that exists, whether it's like we don't invest in nuclear energy because we're afraid that we can have a situation. So anyway, that's the idea of it. It's just like
do you think
questioning it.
Chernobyl will happen?
I think so. I think it was also a fantastic HBO
Not as-
miniseries.
I don't think I wholeheartedly don't believe that like the nuclear reactor failures were as bad as they've been marketed to be. Like you have videos of that.
I agree. That's not my question.
Yeah, it definitely happened. Yeah, but was it?
I just love how Matt's just trying to get all these things on the record so he can.
This is the beauty of Rabbit Hole Recap. We have 5 years of on the record. You guys are just getting started. Yeah, I mean, the
This is supposed to be a Bitcoin podcast.
We were firebombing Japanese cities. It was actually incredibly effective from a military standpoint.
Yeah.
And I personally believe the main reason we dropped the nukes was to prove that they exist. Literally why we dropped them, to show Russia and the rest of the world, like, look, we figured out this fucking cool bomb thing.
Yeah, and Russia was planning to invade, and we would have ended up with like a West Germany, East Germany sort of split. But this was a way for us to get all of Japan.
But it doesn't even go into Pearl Harbor. It wasn't even like what Pearl Harbor was.
I think Pearl Harbor happened as well.
No,
Pearl
it
Harbor definitely
happened. It
happened,
happened.
but they had like a warning that they didn't.
It was like it was to
Let's
incite.
record show.
It was mainly like that. It was to incite the response, which is to your point.
I mean, this is the fucked up thing. Our government has lied to us. Go to Gulf of Tonkin, like you go to like all these things that have been proven. Like there's a number of things that have been proven to be true. Like whether it's Gulf of Tonkin, Operation Mockingbird, Paperclip, MK Ultra. Like the government fucks with us. Like,
And we just talked about it
scale that
the other
it's
day.
like,
We just talked about Jesse the other day about Alexander Hamilton, and we're like, oh, he's looked at as this like savior or that, and it's obviously that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But if you told somebody that, they'd look at us like we're crazy.
I mean, that's such a great little bit for you, Marty, of like Hamilton as a show like that. There's your psyop right there.
I saw that with Lin-Manuel. I was like, hey, it was a good musical.
It was great.
Maybe Hamilton was a good
musical,
guy.
but it's all about like collectivism and advancing the federalist position against individual rights. Like that's us as a culture deciding that Hamilton is going to be the hero in an era when we should be, the alternative was Jefferson and individual liberty.
I disagree with Hamilton on a lot of his personal views, but I think he was a victim of early suit racism.
I won't deny that, but he totally fucked up like the money in the early days of. Yeah. And Jefferson was right. Matt Dines actually wrote a good piece that's up on TFTC about Jefferson and Hamilton in the fights that they went through leading up to the Louisiana Purchase, and like giving more credit to Jefferson, which I don't think he's gotten a lot of credit, but like the Louisiana Purchase was like his trump card. Like, fuck you, Hamilton. We're doing this purchase. Like, we're gonna have freedom in the United States.
You want to talk about living in a bubble? I watched the Hamilton musical with my father in person, and I think he might have been the only person in the world that was surprised. He didn't know the ending. He was like surprised when he died in the duel. Somehow that spoiler wasn't ruined for him.
Who killed him? Aaron Burr killed him?
Yeah.
Aaron Burr.
Yeah. VP.
Yeah. Should we bring back duels? Nobody wants to touch that one. We've touched a lot of third rails here. Nobody wants to touch the dual rail.
We all agree duels exist.
Yeah, did they ever happen?
Let's go ask Alexander Hamilton. Other Bitcoin things to talk about.
How did we get on that tangent?
This one, you forced that tangent.
Oh, right, because the Russian coup is happening.
Oh, yeah.
So we went to India.
If there's a nuclear war, like Tennessee probably gets hit. I just, right before I die, I don't want people to be like, "Told you so, Matt." You're wrong.
I don't know. I think we should tie it all together. Like, it's like all these conversations again. Like, we have to like be skeptical of this because the government's lied to us. Like, we're talking about getting nuked. We're talking about the government taking away our privacy and like having to fucking leave the places we grew up in. It's all insane. It does not need to be this way.
It speaks to like my journey of like I was the establishment liberal, with the degrees, and then Bitcoin forced me to
the suit racist.
I was the suit, and I had to, and then Bitcoin forces me to question all of that and eventually cast off all of that. And it really does a number on your psyche in terms of what you trust. And I think this is a funny outgrowth of that phenomenon for Bitcoiners, is like, if you go through that process of questioning the Federal Reserve and the powers that be with regard to monetary policy, and you see the dark history of it and how they tried to implement a federal bank for 100 years before sneaking it in at Christmas break in 1913. That makes you lose faith in the establishment, and it makes you question everything. And it's fair to make fun of Bitcoiners for being a little bit absurd and taking that to the extreme, because their trust, their faith has been so shattered that they're not willing to take on faith what the government tells them about anything anymore. So it does kind of it does unify it's a common experience for Bitcoiners to have to go through that loss of faith. But we also have to put faith in the physical world and draw some certain lines about history of events that did and didn't happen.
When Jesse was sharing his journey, and the progression through the realization of the lies, all I could think of is he's about 4 years from beating Marty's shoes about nukes and
Yeah, we'll check back into 4 years. Jesse will be here like, space is definitely fake, guys.
It sounds to me that Marty's a nuke believer based on his percentages.
I don't I've never seen a nuke blow up in front of me before. That's all I'll say. Like,
I'm imagining like Marty, like a nuke just gets dropped on Philly, and it's like, oh fuck, damn it.
No, I mean, and I'm not trying to diminish the shit that we did to Japan at all. Like,
well, I wonder, like, so I mean, you guys had very bullish cases on how quickly Binance fails.
I think you flipped me on that.
When do we think the next nuke gets dropped?
Let's not. No, come on. No. Hopefully never.
Scary one.
Never.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of have a theory that we might start seeing like smaller scale.
Jesus, Matt, you're gonna manifest this shit. Stop talking about it like that.
Well, because like the main reason is like if you use one right now, like the U.S. government will fuck you up. So like, what happens if that deterrent disappears and it's like you can use small scale nukes and you don't have your whole country fucking vaporized?
I don't want to think about that.
What was that?
Turned to hydrogen bombs awfully quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not rooting for it. I'm just observation. Be aware, freaks.
Be aware.
Matt has some dark, deep corners.
You guys think I'm the crazy one? Matt's
You
here. Like,
know where we're at, right? Like a small scale nuke gets dropped somewhere, and like RHR that week, Marty's like, nah, it didn't happen, psyops.
There was, as part of the like Ukraine stuff, there was like a narrative that got inserted from like the liberal warmongers that like we should use tactical nukes to stop Putin, and that was around for like a month, and then got pushed back enough that they stopped talking about that. That was scary.
Matt, what was that book that you told me to read? With the EMP?
3 seconds later or something.
Yeah, it's about like basically EMP attack and then
it was like 3 seconds later, 3 years later, 3 something. He like
and so I'm driving, and I hadn't told you this. I'm driving back from New York while the skies are red, and I'm like, I got to get out of here, and I'm listening to the audio book, and like in my headset. So like my wife's sitting there, and I'm just like getting anxiety, and it's just like
she's not hearing it. It's just you.
It's just me, and I'm just hearing like, and then it's explaining how dark it gets, and like the going to the nursing home, and they're like all the craziness once like there's no power, and the skies are starting to get really dark, and I'm just driving, and I'm like, God damn it, Matt! Like, why did you put this on me right now? I was just like trying to drive back to Texas, and I'm like, what if I never make it back?
Yeah. So the book is set in like the Black Mountains of North Carolina or something.
Mm-hmm.
And unknown enemy, we don't know who did it, but someone dropped nukes in the atmosphere to create EMPs, and everyone's power goes out, and it's the aftermath of that.
Yeah, once people realize, and then like the stores, how they're as quick gone, and then everything that transpires.
Like modern cars don't work, old cars still work.
Can we bring some optimism into this conversation? Is anybody optimistic about anything? Are we have the potential to avoid nuclear annihilation? The need for big cities the people in big cities, like our friend Brian here, to leave. Do you guys see any light at the end of the tunnel outside of Bitcoin?
It's just disappointing. Not disappointing. I don't know. It's kind of frustrating to think that if it does happen, like what I have to look forward to is like RHR that week, you just being like, it didn't happen. Like I know that's what's gonna happen, and it's
he won't. I mean, if it's gonna be like
true.
It's napalm. It was napalm. It was napalm. That's what they'll come back with.
I think this might be the one that gets us like on some like Rolling Stone. Like these Bitcoiners are fucking crazy.
What was it?
Nuke truthers.
They had that. Somebody sent it to me today. It was right wingers and their seed oil like situation.
Really?
Yeah, in like a big publication.
We'll know we've made it when Rolling Stone is calling us crazy.
That's what gives me optimism right now. It's like,
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Jesse.
Rolling Stone.
No, that people are questioning seed oils. People are questioning raw milk. Like, this shit that we've been told.
Psyop. It's just
Like
That's why it's just
and there's milk.
People,
There's no raw milk.
well, everybody's questioning, right? And like, who's the voice of reason that people turn to? It's fucking Joe Rogan. And people are finally getting to a point where like, you know what? Joe Rogan is talking sense and the media is not. And so it does feel like the pendulum is just starting to swing back towards reason.
I wanna give a shout out to Richardson Farms here in Austin. Their raw milk is incredible.
My dad visited and he opened our fridge and he's like, "Why does your milk say not safe for human consumption?"
That is like, Matt, the first time you dropped that on RHR and you're like, before pasteurized milk, raw milk was just milk. Like I'd never thought of it that way. It's like, it's just
what
milk.
they took from us, Marty.
It's literally thousands of years of people drinking milk, and then a few decades ago, like, we're gonna pasteurize this. And
I've been reading a book about Genghis Khan recently. Actually, a recommendation that we got, Michael, from somebody we talked to. And the Mongols took over everything and on a diet of milk and meat and blood. Like they were the strongest people on the battlefield for a reason. They weren't eating just grains.
Yeah, we have a really awesome pediatrician, and that's like, I hate even using this term because it's like it's just what we should be thinking about, like base, like just like the things that you need to do. And like one of the big ones is like start giving like animal protein and beef, and it's like a beef liver. It's like the highest, you mash it up or whatever for an infant. And, wife, psyop Northeast, they're like, really, like, or they say you also give like the baby like a big piece of meat and you just like gnaw on it and they just like absolutely love it. But it's just like, that's kind of stuff. Like I can see Brian's face. Like, that sounds insane. It's like, it literally just like warped everybody's mind to be like, what are these people thinking or doing? And this was like, to your point, this was how they took civilizations with milk and beef.
Yeah. And I mean, she's not only our pediatrician, my wife goes through it too. And like, it's like common sense stuff. She's like, get outside and walk around for an hour between 7 and 9, get like vitamin D.
Wait, your child doctor is also your adult doctor?
For my wife, yeah.
Wow.
Wait, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
She does, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
This is another little soapbox I've been enjoying recently of kids. So why do we have such bad teeth? I think there's pretty good evidence that it's our diets as kids, that we're not chewing tough enough food. Instead, we get this mash, this smoothie type shit when we're little
cereal.
Kids being spoon fed to us, and cereal. And there's a book by Weston Price that's all about examining the teeth of indigenous cultures versus civilized, urban cultures. And
I thought that.
And
you're live.
And the indigenous cultures have great teeth, and so it's. I guess the takeaway is, if you've got kids, they should be chewing tough foods to develop the muscles in the face that actually spread out the jaw and deliver like a good jawline, a good set of teeth.
I want to give a shout out to Apollo Gum with their mastic gum. Bitcoiner Nick Young, I believe his last name is. I forget his last name, but Nick, he's friends. He's an Austin guy. Good friends with Matt Snow. I've been chewing that to get my jawline. I caught my profile on video once, and my chin is just weak, and I need to chew mastic gum to get it stronger. Shout out to Apollo Gum.
Yeah. I was just thinking about like some of the random like sunglasses. Weren't we talking about the sunglass situation with the eyes? With a friend. Yeah.
It actually makes your eyes worse.
Yeah. And
I've never worn. I've actually just like never liked wearing sunglasses, and I always lose them. So I stopped wearing them like a decade ago.
To Jesse's point, I think you find the optimism in these conversations and the Overton window shifting slowly but surely, right? Like that's whether it's RFK Jr. or like, and he's not perfect, but like he's asking questions and he's getting other people to ask questions. And I think that's where I find some optimism, right? Because like for a while it seemed like nobody was saying anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, the Overton window is definitely shifting.
Hate to crush your optimism, gents.
No, we're all definitely optimistic, but the reality is you have to turn awareness to situations or like
You have to be pragmatic and logical and realistic about the state of things.
Yeah,
Hope for
I
the
was
best.
like an optimist until 2020 happened. You're not going to catch me on that train anytime soon.
Well, maybe
Sorry.
maybe you're like the Jim Cramer of the optimism doomer trade. Like if you're doomer.
Marty, am I clear here? Are you calling Pete Clown World again, or is the...
No, I'm not calling Pete.
we're nowhere near
No.
the P clown world.
No. Like you said, bull market and statism. I mean, the U.S. government's trying to lock people up for life for writing cryptographic code. Like,
I don't think P clown world can end until the dollar ends.
that's a good point.
Yep, I agree with that. I agree. I think that
They're one
people
and the
will
same.
turn to the government for solutions so long as that's UBI and stuff like that.
Well, that has that's another good point. Like talking about like moving the Overton window. I think a lot of the Overton window shifting is people realizing like government is creating these problems and going back to the trough to have them fix the problems is obviously not working. And I'd be very curious. I'm very intrigued to see if they do try to bring back like mask mandates and some form of COVID lockdowns this fall. I hope people push back. I don't know what's going to happen.
My curse tweet is December 2019. I think I tweeted out bullish on humanity. the Hong Kong protests were like going on. I was like, oh, like Hong Kong's gonna resist, Meanwhile, Hong Kong's failed. We had like the whole COVID lockdowns and everything like 4 months later. It's a completely cursed tweet.
I mean, the idea. I hate going here. I don't even know why, but like
You're going there, go.
it's like this. One of the ideas was the money broke, or the money has been broken, but like whatever happened with the repo markets in September of 18, and then the lockdown
September 19.
And then there was this understanding that there had to inject a certain amount of liquidity, and then you had to like stop the movement of funds or movement of capital from like to prevent inflation. And so if like that's just a line of thinking. I'm not saying I buy into it or don't, but if there is something to that, then and we know things are breaking again, that would be a reason to put people back in a box.
Yeah, no, that is actually what I would imagine is actually happening. It's either a combination of the financial system crumbling and elections. I think that's why they would bring back lockdowns and mask mandates.
Here's a better question. What's the percentage likelihood that the election happens next year?
Jeez. Dude,
It's
I put like an 80% chance. I would like.
Yeah.
I'll bet you.
You could see like a crisis in confidence in like voting systems.
That the elections happen next year.
A whole coin?
Wait, do I get like because I don't like think it's a high likelihood, but I don't think it's non-zero. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not on a Bitcoin. I give you 10-1 odds
on a whole Bitcoin. 10-1 on a whole Bitcoin. 10-1 on a whole Bitcoin. That's kind of risk adjusted.
I'm 0.1 Bitcoin.
10 million sats.
Yeah, but
I converted it for him because he can't do Sats math.
No, I was thinking about how I'd have to lock it up now. I'd have to buy it now because it would be a year from now, and that's a different calculus. I'm 0.1 Bitcoin and what the
Do we all think the Earth is round?
Yes.
I think Columbus figured that one out.
Tanguma, what do you think? Is Earth round?
Sure. Yes.
Sure. Sure.
Yes, I mean I don't. The reason why I don't answer any of these things definitively is like I just haven't gone and looked into it. So if you ask me something that I've like done, then I will say yes, I know it to be true. If there's something else like the state that Jesse referenced in the state of the world, it's like I haven't like gone to look and then
I've never seen a nuke blow up.
Oh boy.
That was obvious. related and tangential to the elections. I just think if we'll have sham elections. You don't have
they're all sham elections. And you don't even have to go to 2020 and believe that election was rigged, even though that overnight is a little questionable.
How far back do you have to go, Marty?
You go back to 2016 WikiLeaks. They proved the DNC rigged that primary to get Hillary through. They caught them dead to rights in those emails.
So it was 2012, 2008 were those legit, and then 2016 it started being.
I don't know. We have 2016 cold hard proof that it was certainly rigged in a certain way. At least the Democratic primary was, and then you run with the assumption if they're down to rig this, what else are they down to rig, and then how long have they been doing it?
Right. And to Michael's earlier point, the farther back you go, the less information you have, and the less reliable that information is. Really.
Yeah.
But the less falsifiable the information is, with the nuclear tests, when they had footage in the 40s of bombs going off,
I'm going to send you some information, Jesse. Don't worry.
I mean, you realize that.
I'm kidding.
You know that SpongeBob's origin story, right?
What?
Oh, Bikini Atoll. Oh, okay. Funny.
Wait, what?
Bikini Bottom
tests, and they created Sponge Human.
Oh yeah. So Michael, there's a small island chain, the Bikini Islands, Bikini Atoll, that we used as our nuclear testing ground for our hydrogen bombs in the 50s, and we completely obliterated everything there, removed islands from the face of the earth.
Allegedly.
Have you seen it, Marty?
Were you there? Oh, I'm kidding.
No, I've seen the footage, and I've seen the Google on satellite footage. You can see where the bombs went off because there's gigantic craters in the ocean.
Yeah.
There's a group.
I want to be clear. I'm just trolling here.
There's a group Marty and I are a part of. It's they're based in North Texas, and they're gonna really love this episode.
Shout out. You know who you are.
You know who you are.
Yeah.
A group chat.
No, they're a group. They physically live in North Texas.
Yeah. We're like our North Texans here.
You know a couple of them.
What should we wrap it up on? Optimistic, something logical. Should we try to bring it back and prove to the audience that we're not totally crazy?
Well, here's an optimistic thought. An optimistic thought we could build on. But when the pendulum starts to swing back, the fastest rate of change starts to happen there in the middle, right? So if we're swinging back towards sanity, that will start to catch on faster and faster and faster in terms of questioning the food pyramid, questioning COVID stuff. So we could be entering a little bit of a renaissance in terms of critical thinking, if that's true.
I think that's happening. I like that.
I do want to mention that if you're one of the dozen people that use Electrum's Lightning implementation, there appears to be a bug or some kind of vulnerability, so you should upgrade.
Yeah, the four of you should upgrade your code.
4.4.6. They're going to announce what the vulnerability was in about 3 weeks.
So all 12 of you.
What else happened? Anything else happen? Bitcoin?
I mean, we have a whole list that we didn't cover, but we're good.
SEC.
Electrum is literally number 2 after Binance on the list.
Let's see what else we got here.
It's mostly software updates. Proton Mail complied with 6,000 data requests in 2022.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Proof of work for Tor is a big win. I think it could help a lot.
It's been live for a few months. Is proven to work well.
I think they were just testing it. But the formal announcement happened yesterday. Now it's actually live, and the concept is relatively simple. It's for the longest time Tor had 0 DDoS denial of service protection. You can just keep hitting onion services, and their protection was they had a centralized block list, because Tor's threat model has always been the U.S. government blesses us, and so it doesn't matter that we have a centralized block list. But now they added this proof of work mechanism. So basically how it works is if you access an onion service, you go to a Tor website, you don't have to do any proof of work by default. But if that Tor website is getting hit by a bunch of people and potentially being under a denial of service attack, it will hit you with consistently greater proof of work. And the users whose clients actually do that work will get served the website. So it'll add a cost to attackers that are just trying to flood Onion services with requests.
So an individual user CPU simply do the proof of work, and the idea is that an attacker would need so many computers doing that, they waste so much electricity that it's not worth it.
For the end user, there's no change. The end user might see like a slight delay, but in the background, like their client is doing this proof of work. And there's no token involved, no blockchain, none of that stuff. It's just good old fashioned proof of work that escalates up based on how much traffic is going to an Onion service.
Back to Hashcash.
Yeah.
Is it Hashcash?
I mean, it seems very similar to that. Yeah. I think that's a big win. I think at least they're going in the right direction. We'll see how effective it is.
Love to see that. What about you guys? Anything?
What's going on at the park? How are vibes in Nashville?
Vibes are high. We have it's a little bit quiet right now. We have Big Week coming up in September. I don't know what week that is. The week of the 12th or something. We have Grassroots Bitcoin. All the meetup organizers are going to be in town.
And then the next big one is November for Noster.
Yeah, Noster November is... I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about yet, but there might be a street fair.
I thought you were going to say street fight. That would have been cooler.
You're welcome to start one at the fair.
Tools in the backyard.
I'm a lover, not a fighter.
There might be a street fair of Bitcoin merchants that are also Noster merchants. We'll
Nice.
see.
That'd be cool. Jesse, what's on your mind?
Well, I was thinking about, I mean, in terms of vibes are high, I'm excited about, Michael, Brian, and I can't really talk yet about things that are going on with OnRamp at the moment. But looking forward to announcing some cool stuff pretty soon. So looking forward to being more public about that.
I like cool stuff. Brian, how's it? Is this your first podcast? Your second podcast?
Second now, yeah. Second of the day and second ever. So
How was
into
it?
the fire. I think it's been
Well,
fun.
technically, this got released first. This is your first one. The
Yeah,
other
that's
one.
true.
Yeah,
Well, that's good.
that one
No, it's
doesn't
been-
exist yet.
It's been
How's it been since you came over from the dark side?
it's been incredible. I mean, it was so frustrating. I mean, we talked about this on the last trade, but like it got very tiresome being in that world. And yeah, now it's like mission alignment, on the same page. Like let's go build shit.
Throw Matt a bone. Give him something crazy that happened at Coinbase you feel comfortable in sharing that's just completely effed up.
I mean, let me be careful with this, but I mean, there was just I won't go too specific, but like there was some security practices that were out of bounds, like talking like pieces of paper and one person in charge, and like won't get any more specific than that, but it was. And that was I wasn't close to that situation, but that was, through the grapevine of people that I knew elsewhere in the business. And yeah, I mean the main thing that I saw that I was there is what I talked about, and just in terms of conflicts of interest, like cognitive dissonance and people just going along with the party line and recognizing that the business model is tied to shilling all of this other stuff. So yeah.
I have some market moving news on Rapid Hole recap today. Michael?
Just excited about the BitBlock boom. It feels like it's a special, when the 2020 was like a pivotal time and all the stuff had happened. We got to all connect. Hadn't seen Matt in a while. It feels like the same thing. We had a late night that year, and now you had me out last night. Feels like just we're all getting back together. Maybe fall's coming. It was quiet summer, so it's time to get back to building.
I'm so ready to get back in the saddle.
Yeah. So yeah, it pumped, and then also just have to do the obvious shout out to Gary. Like we reference it, but he in 2020 when everybody was like scared, didn't want to do anything, he like took the biggest stand. And like there's that whole joke with nobody thought it was going to happen, and then it was like happening. Like, I guess we got to go.
Yeah, and then we had big standoff at the hotel.
Huge shout out to Gary. I'm really sorry I missed you, but Black Boom this year, first time in a while.
I mean, that was a perfect example of just like this is my first. I got to go to weddings. This is my first year ever missing, which is hard to.
We
hard
usually
to
have a
stomach.
recap there.
Yeah, but 2020. I mean, it was a great example of like it is literally a mental decision to step up and push back against the tyranny. Like the people.
2020 Bit Black Boom will never be topped. That was the real.
No, the hotel management was like, everybody put your mask on. We were like, get out of here. We're not doing that. And they're like, all right.
Yeah, there's this thing we joke about, like about not being able to. They don't joke, but like not being able to lie. Just like viscerally not feeling good, and to the point where you can't do it. And I remember coming back from Bit Block Boom and walking around Austin, and I couldn't put the mask on because it was just felt like a lie, and they just never put it back on after that Bit Block Boom. And to your point, it's like once that mental, that's all you need, and then you're looking at like, oh, there's no air underneath there.
Yeah, that's the optimistic tip I want to live it on. Is anybody listening, anybody out there, like all the tyranny that is subsuming us right now, surrounding us, seems to be getting heavier and more dire by the day. Like it's literally. There's a switch in your mind that you can flip at any time. It's a mental decision to stand up and just say, no, I'm not fucking doing this anymore. I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to do it anymore. The network had the formula there. It is that switch exists in you. Literally just takes a little bit of courage and some articulation of the word no.
Do the bank run. Stay humble and stack sats.
Peace of love, freaks. Stick